at this point, I don't know the technical term is standing. If I would have standing to object to the judge's ruling where I wasn't a party to it. But certainly the media can make a request, potentially on Dan Webb himself, to ask that the report be released. And we could see what outcome there would be from that. I don't know that we're totally shut off from trying to get to the contents of the report. But again, I understand Judge Tuman's ruling, the protection of the grand jury secrecy, but this is an important report because it tells us about a state's attorney who's trying to get reelected. And we've got to know how it is she may have abused the office and what kind of loss of integrity is detailed in that report.
Webb would have standing, I imagine, to appeal. Has your office asked him whether he plans to do so?
Well, I've tried to keep away from contact with Dan Webb about this because I don't want to politicize his actions. His action done for a very good and public reason to restore confidence in the judicial system and in justice itself. So at this point in time, I haven't. Maybe we'll consider doing that. But again, this isn't the politics of the decision. It's the need to have information about someone that you might consider voting for when in fact she's been accused of lying to the public something like 4 or 6 times and trying to keep information from them. Once again, she's doing the same thing.
Judge O'Brien, this is Megan over at the Tribune. How are you?
Good, Megan.
Can you hear me okay?
I think so.
I just wanted to note that when Judge Castillo was in court today before Judge Tuman on behalf of the state's attorney's office, he specifically did not object to the release of the report per se. He was asking for a brief delay to review. I mean, it seems that you're basically saying that they tried to bury it, and they're specifically saying today in court that they were not trying to bury it or deny its release altogether.
Well, I think I'd look at it this way. They didn't want the report to come out until they got a look at it. And having gotten a look at it and describing that it's contained material inaccuracies, what those inaccuracies.
Hey, so Judge, I'm so sorry. Is he cutting out for anyone else, or is that just me? I'm so sorry. All I got was getting a look at it and scrubbing its contained material inaccuracies, and then you started cutting out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you cut out for me too.
Okay, let me try that again. The fact that he's asked to take a look at it before release, and that he describes the report as containing material inaccuracies leads me to conclude that, having said that, he would be looking to keep the report from the public itself. Otherwise, why would you describe it as containing inaccuracies if, in effect, you wanted the report to be released as it was written?
Mm-hmm. I have a question, Judge O'Brien. This is Juliet Fairley, and I write for the Chicago City Wire. I'm curious if at this point it's being delayed. It doesn't sound like it's being, he hasn't given a final answer. And so my question is, if he does say, no, we're not going to release this, does that prevent a report being given to the disciplinary commission?
That's an extremely good question, and I was looking at Dan Webb's summary release, where he indicates that he has a duty to report the problems, the material misstatements to the disciplinary commission, but he wasn't going to do that until he had the full 60-page report and was allowed to release it to them. Now, there are competing interests. As an attorney, you're required to report other attorneys who have a code of ethics problems. So Dan Webb has that duty. Now, does the fact that he can't release the report to them, does that put him in a conflict with that duty? I would say that he still has a duty to report her, and potentially the disciplinary commission, once they look at his initial report, they could require that Judge Tooman release the report to them because of their oversight of all attorney disciplinary problems. So I don't know that we're completely cut off from getting to the contents of that report. It just may be that it will take another effort by another body with different interests to make that request.
Thank you.
And I should note, I don't know who went in front of the grand jury. It's unclear, and Dan Webb's summary report didn't say. But a witness who testifies before the grand jury is not required to keep silent about what he said or she said in front of the grand jury. They're free to tell us. So if you want to make inquiry of the various people that were part of this investigation, you can ask them, what is it you said in front of the grand jury? The public needs to have disclosure, and there are many ways to get at that disclosure. I don't know that Judge Tooman's ruling prevents that disclosure if you use various other kinds of ways or vehicles.
Judge O'Brien, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Jeff Berkowitz here with the Illinois Channel and Public Affairs. Judge, so another avenue perhaps to get at some of the discussion you're having here might be through debates with State's Attorney Foxx. Can you tell us where that stands, the issue of whether you'll be having debates, what format, and when?
At this point, there have been no debates that were set up. Typically, and again, I'm a new kid to this block. The television stations and/or some of the Women's League of Voters will set up a debate and then request that the candidates, actually commit to it. Nobody's done that at this point. I'm ready and willing and able to debate Kim Foxx at any time. And at this point in time, I'm indicating that she should debate. The voters deserve that. And I'm challenging her to a debate in front of any of the kinds of television stations or public organizations that in the past have organized those debates.
So I know you don't have the full report, but based on the information that was released by Special Prosecutor Webb, what do you think are the one or two major findings of his report so far that would impact on her qualifications or her ability to faithfully execute the duties of her office should she win re-election?
Well, clearly at this point in time, Dan Webb has found what in legal jargon is material misrepresentations. If you're talking to somebody outside of a courtroom, they're called lies. And he found that those lies all were directed toward one purpose: to obscure or hide how special and how much of a political favor was done for one person, Jessie Smollett. And that seems to me to go to the heart against what, state's attorneys and prosecutors are supposed to stand for, that everyone is equal before the law, that no one gets special breaks, and that no one essentially, because of their power or their influence, is treated differently. And here she is lying about the fact that she treated Jussie Smollett differently. So I don't know how she can maintain her position as a prosecutor, which requires the highest integrity, when she's already in fact lost that integrity.
Can we go off subject now to another subject?
Well, let's see if there are other questions from
Sure.
the people that are on. If you would. Thank you, Lucia.
I have a question. Do you get any indication as to how long of a delay there's going to be before the judge decides whether to release? I mean, all the reporting that he is refusing to release, but is there a possibility that he could release it later? And then my follow-up question to that is, what was the excuse that Kim Foxx used to convince this judge to delay the release?
I wasn't there in the courtroom, but it's my understanding that Judge Tuman's ruling did not equivocate in saying, I'm going to look at this particular issue and in a week I'll change my mind or make another decision. My understanding is that his position was he was not going to release that report, full stop. So I don't know that this is a temporary thing. I think from what I understand of people that were in the courtroom, he's not releasing that. And until he either changes his mind or decides differently, we're not going to know. Okay.
Can we go to other questions now?
Well, I guess it depends. Jeff, what is it that you want to ask?
Well, I'd like to know where things stand. You had raised a few weeks ago, and others had raised the Tribune as to a significantly larger number of dismissals, I think, of felonies and substantial matters in the first 3 years of the Foxx administration relative to her predecessor. She had some responses back, I think, her office. Where do things stand on that issue as to whether she has had an extraordinarily high number of dismissals of significant matters by her office?
Well, the number that I saw in the media, which I think is substantiated by her own dashboard, is that in the course of her 3.5 years, she's actually dismissed 25,000 felonies. Now, let me say this, that in order to dismiss a case, it first has to get filed as a court case. So we're not talking about cases where there's an arrest and there's a decision and there isn't enough evidence and the state doesn't approve charges. These are cases where there's been charges approved and then subsequently Kim Foxx has decided to dismiss those cases. And I know a number of those cases have to do with narcotics. And I'm not talking about cannabis. I'm talking about other illegal drugs. Kim Foxx has this opinion that somehow narcotics are not going to be prosecuted in this county, and somehow that makes us all safer. I differ greatly on that because narcotics is the lifeblood of gangs. And if you let them sell drugs openly on the street, you're basically financing their operations, allowing them to pay and give other kinds of consideration to the people that they employ, and it makes us all unsafe. It makes the neighborhoods unsafe, and the very victims that we see as innocent bystanders that are shot when these gangs open fire on each other or open fire on groups of people. Kim Foxx has to be held responsible for all that. Narcotics are not something that you can ignore and keep the neighborhoods and keep victims safe. We've seen that. We're what, at 50% more homicides in Chicago in this 7 months than we were last year. You've got to crack down on guns. You've got to crack down on narcotics. Otherwise, the gangs will continue to proliferate. They'll continue to slaughter innocent children and people, and it's not keeping us safer.
The police released information in the last month or so about prosecutions, felonies filed, charged under and related to lootings. Do you know where that stands as to whether the prosecutions are proceeding? How is State's Attorney Foxx handling those matters?
I'm going to answer that as the last question. Part of the problem is that there's been significant delays in getting cases once filed through the court system. The judges themselves have been working 3 days a week on 1 week and then 2 days a week on the next. So a lot of cases are being continued because of, if you will, a lack of full employment in the criminal courts. I'm going to say this. At some point, we've got to look at this and find out that the judges, the prosecutors, the attorneys that represent people charged with crimes, they may not be first responders, but they are critical in the question of the prosecution of criminal offenses. So we've got to find a situation where we're actually going back to full employment. We cannot continue while COVID is still with us to somehow find that we can go at 25% capacity. It's just not going to work. And I know it puts people at risk, but I think we can find a way to balance the issue of safety to the people that are in the system, to the issue of safety to the community, which is suffering because people that are charged with crimes who may in fact be guilty are waiting months and months and months before a resolution comes to their cases. So I want to thank you all very much. I know that you've been very patient, and I hope that we'll be able at some point in time to get a look at what those 60 pages were that Dan Webb essentially put together. Okay, thank you all very much.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.